The evolutionary depth, why the clock predates humans. In November, on reefs across the Great Barrier Reef, more than 130 species of coral release their eggs and sperm into the water simultaneously. The spawning event lasts minutes. It happens once per year, and it is timed to the full moon. The corals do not have eyes. They do not have brains. They have no mechanism for perceiving light in a way that could be called seeing. But they carry a circalunar clock, a molecular timing system that synchronizes to lunar phase that has been operating for at least 250 million years. Corals are not unique. Palolo worms in the South Pacific spawn on the 7th night after the October full moon. Grunion fish in California beach themselves to spawn on the highest tides after the full and new moons. The marine bristle worm Platynereis dumerilii times its entire reproductive maturation to the lunar cycle, and when researchers kept it in total darkness in the laboratory, its circalunar clock continued to run for months without a single photon of moonlight, with no external timing. Cue whatsoever. The molecular clock that runs the bristle worm's lunar timing is ancient. It predates the split between protostomes and deuterostomes, which means it predates the common ancestor of worms, insects, mollusks, and vertebrates. It predates humans by roughly 600 million years. Here's what this means. The circalunar clock in your body is not a quirk of human evolution. It is not something that evolved recently because ancient hunter-gatherers found it useful to track the moon. It is a piece of molecular machinery so old that it was already fully operational when the first animals with bilateral symmetry appeared in the fossil record. Ancient humans did not invent lunar timekeeping. They inherited a clock that had been running continuously for more than 500 million years, and then they built a civilization on top of it. The mechanism, what is running and how. No one has identified the exact molecular pathway of the human circalunar clock. The Cajochen study proved it exists. The Casiraghi replication proved it persists without moonlight. The coral and bristle worm studies proved it is ancient. But the precise mechanism in humans remains unknown. Here is what we do know. In marine organisms, the circalunar clock appears to be independent of the circadian clock, the 24-hour day-night cycle that governs sleep, body temperature, hormone release, and metabolic activity. The two clocks run in parallel on different timescales, regulated by different molecular pathways. The circadian clock responds primarily to light. The circalunar clock responds to something else, possibly the gravitational pull of the moon, possibly subtle variations in the Earth's geomagnetic field that track lunar orbit, possibly a combination of signals that no laboratory has yet isolated. The fact that the Toba Calm communities with full electric light showed the same lunar sleep pattern as those without it eliminates moonlight as the sole timing cue. The fact that the Cajochen participants were sealed in a windowless laboratory eliminates visual detection. Something non-visual, non-optical, and invisible to conscious awareness is entraining human biology to the lunar cycle. And it is not just sleep. The same pattern appears in reproductive biology. A 2021 study aggregating menstrual cycle data from multiple populations found that women's cycles show statistical synchronization with lunar phase, an effect that modern artificial light has diminished but not eliminated. A 2025 paper in Science Advances confirmed that this synchronization, while weaker than in pre-industrial populations, remains detectable when lunar gravitational pull is strongest. The mechanism is unclear. The signal is not. Your body carries two clocks. The 24-hour clock you negotiate every time you cross time zones or stare at a screen past midnight. And the 29.5-day clock you have never consciously tracked, never adjusted, and never been taught, but which is nonetheless running right now, beneath every decision you make about when to sleep, when to wake, and how deeply you rest when you finally close your eyes. The consequence, what we lost when we stopped looking up. Pull all of this together and a picture emerges. For at least 35,000 years, and likely far longer, human beings tracked the moon. They carved its phases into bone. They synchronized their hunting, their gathering, their ritual gatherings, and their reproduction to its rhythm. The ethnographic record of African hunter-gatherers San Hadza Mabuti shows that lunar phase coordinated group movement across vast distances. When the moon was full, people gathered. When it was dark, people dispersed. The moon was not decoration. It was infrastructure. And then we stopped needing it. Electric light collapsed the distinction between night and day. Digital calendars replaced lunar tracking. The smartphone in your pocket tells you the date with atomic clock precision. You do not need to look at the moon to know what time of month it is. You do not need to look at the moon at all. But your body still does. And here is the uncomfortable implication that almost nobody articulates. Every study of the circalunar clock, Cajochen, Casiraghi, the menstrual lunar synchronization research, finds the same pattern. The signal is real, it is endogenous, and it is being interfered with. Artificial light does not erase the lunar rhythm, but it does scramble it, producing a biological dissonance between what your brain expects and what your environment delivers. The consequences of that dissonance are not well understood. No major longitudinal study has tracked the health effects of long-term circalunar disruption. But we know from circadian research what happens when you chronically misalign a biological clock with the environment: increased rates of metabolic disease, cardiovascular stress, mood disorders, and impaired immune function. The moon is not optional to human biology. It never was. And pretending it is bathing ourselves in artificial light, staring at screens until minutes before sleep, living as though the night sky is irrelevant, may be a larger intervention in our own physiology than we have ever been willing to measure. The calendar you can't opt out of. Here is what changes when you accept the Cajochen data, the Lebombo bone, and the 600 million year evolutionary history of the circalunar clock. You are not an animal that escaped the rhythms of nature. You are an animal that buried them under concrete and artificial light and a 24-hour economy, but they did not go away. They are still running. The same 29.5-day cycle that governed the spawning of ancient corals, that guided the carving of the world's oldest calendar, that coordinated the movements of every hunter-gatherer band whose descendants still walk the planet. That cycle is inside you right now, adjusting your sleep architecture whether you acknowledge it or not. Ancient humans did not need to be told to watch the moon. It was the only clock they had, and the fact that their bodies and yours still track it in windowless laboratories, under electric light, in cities that never dim, tells you something about what kind of animal you are. You are not a machine that runs on 24-hour cycles. You are a living thing that runs on a lunar month, and the only mystery is not whether the moon still controls you. The mystery is whether you will ever notice. What was the most surprising thing you learned? Drop it below. I read every comment. Subscribe now so you won't miss our next video.